Right. Okay, I'm sure you can now see my screen. Let's get into these slides. Okay. So maybe let me make this bigger. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So the topic at hand is cost classification, estimation, and behavior. That's learning unit 2 for you. Okay, let's get rid of this right here. Oh, what's going on now? Okay, right. Okay, cost behavior analysis. Okay, involves separating mixed costs into their variable and fixed component. Okay, and analyzing how costs and revenue react to varying levels of activity. Am I in the right? Just want to quickly see something. Am I in the right? Okay, yes, I am. Okay, right, that's fine. Cool. Right, so cost behavior analysis involves separating mixed costs into their variable and fixed components and analyzing how costs and revenues react to varying levels of activity. Okay, cost estimate involves measuring past costs to predict future costs for decision-making purposes. Okay, why do we want to estimate costs and stuff like that? So that we can predict future costs, so that we can make decisions. Why do we want to be able to make decisions? So that obviously we can run the business as effectively as possible. Okay. It involves grouping costs according to common characteristics. Okay. Right. So what type of characteristics? A cost can be classified on the basis of identity, so materials. Okay. Is this a cost that is arising as a result of materials purchased? Or is it a cost that is arising as a result of labor? Or is it a cost that is arising as a result of various expenses, okay, that we incur in the production of income, all right, or as we conduct our usual daily business activities, okay. Then function, we've got manufacturing, administrative, and selling and distribution type costs, okay. Then variability, okay, we've got fixed, variability, and semi-variable. Okay, sorry, fixed, variable, and semi-variable. Okay, right. When we talk about, sorry, excuse me, when we talk about fixed costs, okay, we're talking about costs that don't change. Okay, and I think probably in high school, if you did the business, you probably did come across this before. All right, or have come across this. Okay, then you have an example of fixed costs is like your rent. Okay, it remains the same throughout the year, regardless of whether you make money or you don't make money. Okay, that's a fixed cost. Variable costs, variable costs, depending on how many units we produce, all right, that will influence how much that cost will be. So the more products we make, the more costs we will incur as a result of producing more. Okay. Then semi-variable. A good example of semi-variable costs would be your telephone. Okay. The telephone, typically what happens there is that we pay a fixed cost, and I'm talking about landlines, right? We pay a fixed cost to keep the landline live, all right? Then what happens after that is after we have a fixed cost in keeping the landline live or keeping our landline registered, we then have the variable cost. The variable cost is then how many calls we make, okay? How far were those calls to? Were we calling America, Japan, and the like? Okay, that will also have an influence, okay, on our fixed costs, okay? Semi variable costs. Then we have controllable costs, okay? There are costs that we have control of, and then there are costs we have no control of, okay? So such like if we find ourselves in a, what do you call it, in an accident, if the factory burns down, for example, okay? Whereas controllable is, okay, how much of this are we purchasing, okay? So things like that, normality and abnormal costs as well. Then we have time, historical or predetermined, okay? Right, let's move on. Then we have variable, fixed, and mixed costs, okay? Mixed is the same as semi-variable, okay? Right, where we spoke on variable, we spoke on, so let's just read mixed. Mixed cost that has both a fixed component and a variable component, okay? Then semi-fixed, costs that are fixed within a defined level of activity, but increase or decrease when activity reaches upper or lower levels, okay? Then semi-variable, wow, okay, so it's different. Costs that respond less proportionally to changes in the level of production output, okay? So here when they say less, respond less, I'm assuming that they're obviously speaking in terms of variable costs. So it's not in direct proportion, all right, with changes in the level of production, but they do move in the same direction as the levels of production, but just not as 1:1, okay? They move less in the same direction, okay? Right. So what I was describing when we were talking about semi-variable was actually mixed, having a component of fixed and having a component of variable. Okay. Okay. And then if you look in your textbook on page 47, you'll see a graphic representation of types of costs. Okay. Right. Then the high-low method. Okay. So this is a method that we use to find what is the fixed and the variable portion of a mixed cost. Okay, it says is a cost accounting method that uses the highest and lowest total costs as a base for estimating the estimating the fixed and variable elements of a mixed cost. Okay, that's all we're trying to achieve. Okay, we don't know what the fixed portion is, we don't know what the variable portion is. But by using the high-low method, we're trying to establish what those fixed and variable uh, portions of the cost are. Okay, right. And then here they're just showing us the formula. Okay. Then here we've got the least square regression method. Okay, is a statistical method used to study trends, relationships in revenue, cost, production, and other data. Okay. It plots a straight line through the sets of points such that the sum of the squared distances from data points to the line is minimized. Essentially, what the model aims to do is to plot the best fit line based on the data points provided. Okay, right. So, something worth mentioning, when it comes to the least square regression method, you can do this through your calculators. I'm going to share a video with you guys on the what you call it, on the, I'm going to give you a formula sheet for learning unit 1 and learning unit 2, okay? And through that formula sheet, I'm also going to put a YouTube video link on that formula sheet, or it should already be there. I hope it's already there. And that will show you how to insert the data to actually calculate using the least square regression method. All right, so you'll see in your textbook, you see here you've got the regression equation, and here they're giving you the normal regression equation, and obviously you'll see this can get very complicated very quickly. Okay, so you want to learn how to use your calculator. Okay, and all you'll be doing there is calculating what A is, calculating what B is, and so forth, so forth. Okay, so it's a lot better, a lot easier, and to the point. Okay, okay. Then in your textbook, if you look at example 2.1, you'll find an example of the least regression method. Okay, test of reliability. To test the reliability of the cost equation, including how reliable the potential cost drivers are at predicting the dependent variable, the following ratios can be used. Coefficient of determination, standard error of estimate, okay, and then standard error of coefficient. Okay, so these now they're just explaining them a bit here, and this is all the information that they provide in the book in relation to these. Okay, the coefficient of determination measures the percentage variation. Okay, so by what percentage by what percentage in the dependent variable do we experience variations in the independent variable? Okay, the closer R squared is to 1, the better the goodness of the fit. Okay, so in other words, the less variable, okay, the more they actually fit. Coefficient of determination. A ratio of 1 would be a perfect fit. Therefore, all the variation in the dependent variable is explained in the variation in the independent variable. Okay, so this is proving evidence that there is a relationship. So in other words, if fuel prices do go up, then inflation will go up. Can you see? That's showing if there's a relationship of 1, it's showing that all of the increase in inflation is indeed as a result of fuel prices going up. Okay, right? So that's what they're explaining there. Generally, R squared of 30, 0.30 or higher is a good fit. Okay. Usually they don't ask these type of questions, but it's good to know just the definitions, because sometimes as a multiple choice question they could ask that. Okay, then here you've got the coefficient of determination. They don't ask you guys the actual to calculate these things. They just usually ask the definitions. Okay, right. Then standard error of the estimate. The standard error of estimate provides an indication of the absolute size of predictable deviations from the linear line, or the extent of the dispersion around the mean. The extent of the dispersion around the mean. Okay, let's go on. So they're basically saying they're just showing the extent of dispersion, all right, of outcomes, the extent of the outcomes around the average. Okay, how spread out is this, the outcomes? Okay, how related, how close are they, are the final outcomes? Okay, all right, so here they're just giving you the formula. Standard error of coefficient. Standard error of coefficient indicates the reliability of the estimate of the regression coefficient B, therefore whether a relationship between the independent and dependent variable exists. Okay, standard error coefficient does a good job of estimating the reliability of the regression coefficient B. Remember, B in your line is the slope. Okay, right. Then there it says an SB greater than 2 usually represents a significant relationship between the variables. Okay, and then there they just speak into the formula. Linear regression advantages is a statistical method which is preferred to subjective methods such as graphic methods. Okay, then accounts for all available observations and provides more accurate results output than high-low method. Okay, so we get more accurate results from than the high-low method with the linear regression. Okay, now the disadvantages of the linear regression method. The disadvantages. Distortion may result where the data used for cost estimation is not representative of the population. So in other words, you're going to get distortions where the data or the information captured in relation to what we're trying to study does not match the reality of that situation. Okay, so imagine if we are looking at a sample size, but the sample does not reflect that the full population. That would obviously give us distorted results. Okay. Then the next disadvantage is distortion may result if the effects of inflation are not accounted for. So in other words, costs do increase over time, irrespective of the level of activity. Okay. So if we don't acknowledge inflation, we might get the impression that we are increasing our activity because let's say the output will be more, all right? There'll be more sales, for example, but it will look like there are more sales because we would have generated a higher revenue. But it's not that we have actually generated more sales, it's just that we have increased our pricing. Okay. So you can sell fewer products, for example, but your revenue that you generated, let's say in the year before you generated 10 million in sales, and then this year you managed to generate 12 million, okay, but your price isn't significant. Your because of inflation, your total revenue is significantly higher than what it would have been. Okay, it's not necessarily that your total revenue has increased or you've done better. Okay, in terms of marketing or whatever else. Okay. Then the next bullet point it says, as historical data is needed to estimate future costs, there is an underlying assumption that conditions will remain unchanged during the given periods. Okay, so there's an assumption that these numbers will remain the same when we know the world we live in is constantly changing. Okay. Then cost estimate and forecasting can only be done within a given range of activity. Cost estimation and forecasting can only be done within a given range of activity. Okay. Then last one, there's an assumption that there are only two variables involved in cost cost. If more than one variable is identified, multiple regression analysis will need to be used. Okay. Okay, now this is the core of what we are learning in Learning Unit 2, the learning curve theory. Okay, and what the learning curve theory basically is talking about is as we go about our business or our work, we become more and more productive and more efficient. And as a result of becoming more and more efficient, okay, as a result of becoming more and more efficient, obviously our productivity goes up. Okay, here you can see it saying it's based on the premise that when a new job, process, or activity commences for the first time, the workforce involved will probably not immediately achieve maximum efficiency, but through repetition of the task, workers become increasingly knowledgeable, labor efficiency increases. Then it's saying a learning is basically a measure of the production. Okay, Hey Brandon, I see you raised your hand. Would you like to say
Yeah,
something?
yeah, I think your mic was like a bit, so we couldn't hear like the last 10 seconds of it. It was like it was covered. So I just wanted to let you know before you proceed any further. So,
Oh, okay, no problem.
sweet.
Let me
Yeah, it's
plug
working
in
now.
my external mic to make sure that you guys can hear me.
Okay, no worries.
Mm, okay, that's plugged in. Let's shift this here. Coolio. Okay, there we go. All right, I think you should hear me even more clearer now. Right. So what I was just saying is that when it comes to the learning curve theory, what we're talking about is basically that as we become more and more productive, we become more and more efficient. And as a result of, or let me explain it this way rather, as we spend more and more time on the same activities, we become more and more efficient. Okay? So what do we mean when we say efficient? We mean that the same task takes us less and less time because we become more increasingly knowledgeable and labor efficient. All right. So as a result of that, we spend less time doing the same task. Okay. A learning curve is essentially a measure of experience gained in production. Okay. The rate of learning is specified as a percentage that is related to the average time taken to produce a unit. Okay, let's go on. All right. The theory suggests that this average time will decrease as the same task is performed repetitively. Okay. At a certain point, the learning process will cease and the time taken to complete the task will stabilize. So, what they're saying there is that over time, we will stop making gains in terms of um, decreasing the amount of time that it takes us to do the same task. At a certain point, we will have made all the gains there is to make, and we wouldn't be able to get even more efficient. Okay? There's a point in time where we stop getting more efficient, is what they're saying. The learning curve process, or the learning curve or progress curve, is associated with a rate of learning. As the production become more efficient, each subsequent unit will require fewer labor hours to produce, and the average cost per unit drops as the quality as the quantity produced increases. Okay. Cost predictions must allow for the effect of learning. Cost predictions must allow for the effect of learning and reflect the steady decreasing cost. Okay, so what are they saying here? Okay, let me explain that because that's a very important point there. What they're saying is because we're paying 10 Rand per hour for the time that our laborers spend on doing certain work, because now instead of taking them 10 hours, it now takes them 4 hours to do the same amount of work. Our cost predictions should also decrease because we're becoming more and more efficient. Does that make sense? Instead of taking 10 hours, we're now taking 4 hours. Okay, that's what they're basically speaking to there. Okay, then here we have the learning curve ratio. The rate of learning or the learning curve ratio is calculated on the average time of cumulative production. Okay, and this is what we will begin to dissect and practice tomorrow, okay, when we get together. Okay, right. Okay, we'll also have a look at this graphically together tomorrow. Okay, now there's different ways that we can calculate this. There's the exponential function. Okay. Okay, this is in relation to the learning curve used to calculate the average time with a power model. Okay, further explanation by way of illustration. Okay, it'll all make sense when we actually go through it. So that there's the exponential function way of doing it. Then we have the logarithmic function. Okay, so here we would be calculating the same thing or trying to achieve the same thing in terms of calculating the learning rate, but it's just through, it's like mathematics basically. You know, when it comes to maths, there's different formulas that we can use to calculate the same thing, and that's exactly what's transpiring with the logarithmic function and that of the exponential function. Right, on the, what you call this, the answer, or should I say, yeah, the answer sheet that I'll provide you for learning unit 1 and 2, you'll see both those formulas. And when we dissect that, it will also make more sense as to what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. Now, once we have the learning rate, we can now calculate the incremental cost saving that we are making. Okay. The decrease in production time results in a parallel decrease in production costs at each additional unit as each additional unit entails. Less labor, okay, more units produced from the same equipment, fewer delays and lost time. Okay, that's why we're saying the incremental cost decrease will be realized when we increase our learning rate. Incremental cost can be derived by calculating the additional hours required to produce such products and multiplying the additional hours with labor rate. Okay, how? The how. Incremental hours can be derived by estimating the differences between total labor hours with variable combinations of cumulative hours. Okay, all right. Okay, so, oh wow, that's it. Okay, so that is it. Some of these things theoretically may fly over your head, but once we actually just start doing the calculations, it'll all begin to make sense as to what we're doing. Okay, then just from a theoretical standpoint, we are done with learning unit 2. Okay, so I don't know if there are any questions or thoughts from you guys aside, but as you know, because this is more like a phase out module, what we pretty much are just going to be doing is just recapping, brushing over the unit, discussing it, So what I can say from my side is if you guys can come tomorrow with questions in relation to Learning Unit 2, then I can go over and address those concerns or those questions. And then likewise, when we get into the other learning units, that way I think is the easiest way that we can get through this module, because we literally I'd have like 40 something, 50 sessions with you to go through this very same unit. But if I look at the time I have with you, I only have like maybe 12 sessions, or it could be even 10 sessions. So obviously we don't have the time to actually go through various topics the same way. So we're pretty much rushed, in other words. Um, so yeah, I hope nobody is seeing this module for the first time, to be quite honest with you. Um, but yeah, if so, that is the situation we find ourselves. So at this point, I'm going to just let you be and ask you to just revise that in the meantime. Then when we meet tomorrow morning on campus, face to face, from 8 to 10, then we will try and do some activities together. Okay. Are there any questions or thoughts? Anything you guys would like to highlight?
Aubrey, can I just ask, will tomorrow's session be available on YouTube?
Hey, isn't it so? I haven't been posting these videos on YouTube just for the sake of the fact that it's kind of, because it's such a, I haven't gotten the opportunity to go through it properly. But what I can do, because obviously you need these sessions, so what I'll do is I will uh, I will record it and I will upload it onto YouTube. And then what I'll do is I'll actually make it a private thing, and then I'll share the link with you guys on your what's it called, via announcements, so that you guys can then view those videos.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no problem. Cool. Right, is there anything you want to talk about or bring up, Brandon, from your side before we call it a day?
No, I think everything was pretty straightforward. Like as you said, most of the theory was quite simple. It's just that I guess when we see tomorrow, when we actually engage in the practical aspect of it, then it'll be more understanding. Right? So I'm okay.
All right, awesome. Cool, then I guess we will see each other tomorrow morning.
Yes.
All right, cheers, guys. I'll see you when I
See you.
see you.